Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. We talk about anything and everything mobile home parks on the MHP Show, investing in them, operating them, crazy stories about things that happen in mobile home parks, acquiring them, everything we can talk about. And before we get started on the show today, I want to have you guys go to my masterclass webinar. So if you go to derekvickers.com/masterclass webinar, you can get access to that webinar. It's an hour. It takes you from the basics of mobile home park investing all the way up to acquiring your first deal. You can get all the information you need to know there. It's free, so go check that out. Also, go check out our Facebook group. It's Mobile Home Park Investing Pros. We provide tons of value and deal analysis there if you check that out. It's Mobile Home Park Investing Pros on Facebook. And lastly, if you want to partner on a deal, and if it's your first deal or your second deal, look, I'd love to talk to you about doing that. So send me an email at derek@victoryrealestategroup.com. So today on the MHP Show, we have a very, very special guest. We have Miss Simone Fraser here with Liberty Capital Group. Now, Simone purchased her first mobile home park in her junior year of college, which is crazy. What I was doing in my junior year of college, we won't get into that. And since then, she's closed 14 mobile home park acquisitions, all direct to seller via cold calls. And Liberty Capital Group as a company actually focuses on off-market MH and RV parks and storage facilities in the state of Florida. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek. I am excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Let's get into, I want to know, like, purchasing that first park in college, and we'll get into that. But was that your first like business venture, or did you do something before that?
Yeah, so my first business venture was actually selling above ground hot tubs, like jacuzzis. So let me set the scene a little bit. I was a sophomore in college in 2020. And in March, we got an email saying, we have to go home because of COVID. So I was born and raised in Tampa, but I was actually going to school out of state in Massachusetts as a chemistry major. So when I was back in Tampa, doing online classes because of COVID, I was working kind of part-time on the side. And one day I saw this yard sign that said free hot tub. Just kind of curious, this guy in my neighborhood. And I went over there and checked it out, and it was a brand new hot tub. It was worth, close to $6,000, and he just didn't want to deal with having it moved. I guess he was moving out of state or something, so he was giving it away for free. So I paid about $300 to have it moved over to my yard, listed it on Facebook Marketplace, and sold it for $4,000. I was like, if I can do this once, I can do it again. And sure enough, I found, hundreds of these listings on Facebook Marketplace, the people giving away these, nice hot tubs, basically for free or for a couple $100. Either they were moving and, just didn't want to deal with moving these hot tubs, or, they had a heating element that was broken, a pump that was broken. And my dad is really handy. So, I got with him, and, he kind of helped me fix them up. And for months, I was just flipping these hot tubs.
Wow. That's freaking awesome. I've never heard of that before. But hot tub flipping, like you could do a course. Like, I'll teach you how to make your first $100,000 flipping freaking hot tubs.
Yeah. And, I was a student and I was living at home and didn't really have, any living expenses per se. So I was able to save up a good amount of cash, and that's what I use to buy my first park.
Wow. So I want to know, like, the thought process behind that, because as I mentioned, when I was in college, like, I knew I always wanted to like make something of myself, but I was too focused on partying. Like, I didn't have that to like, okay, I was a little entrepreneurial, but not like that. So what, like, explain to me the thought process behind that and how you were able to like develop that and where did that come from?
Yeah, I have always had some sort of project going on, like in high school, I always wanted to make some extra cash, walking dogs. I paint as a hobby and, I'd have friends ask me, oh, can you paint this for me? And I'd sell it to them. And I just always want to have some sort of side hustle, some sort of project. I get bored pretty easily, so I always want something to kind of keep me busy. But I'll be honest, I mean, I kind of always make this joke, my parents are kind of hippies, my mom's an art history professor, my dad restores pipe organs. So I never really kind of grew up with, a business, finance mindset. So it always kind of felt, foreign to me. But I guess I kind of always just had that drive to, want to do something more.
That's awesome. That's awesome because I mean, I think that that's great that people like develop that. You guys are so young and you guys have developed a portfolio. And I feel like, when I look back at my years when I was your age, I'm like, man, I wasted so many years and I could be so far ahead of where I'm at right now. So kudos to you for being able to take advantage of that. So let's talk about this first deal. Like you found a mobile home park. Like how in the heck did you like trailer parks? Like, how did you find out about it and how did you find this deal?
Yeah. So, the hot tubs, obviously, it wasn't really that scalable. I could only fix, so many of them at a time. And once I had a good amount of cash, I was kind of like, now what? I wanted to, kind of take something to the next level. And my boyfriend at the time, now my business partner, was getting his real estate license. He always was really interested in real estate. He didn't really know exactly what he wanted to do, whether it was, be a realtor or be more on the investment side. But he was listening to these podcasts, just like the one you have. I think he started off, when we would take road trips, we'd always listen to Bigger Pockets or, Kevin Buck's podcast. And that's really how we found out about mobile home parks. I think part of it really was the timing too, because in 2020, because of COVID, think about, the asset classes that weren't doing well, office, retail. So it's kind of, once we knew we want to do something, real estate related, we want to be on the investment side, it's kind of easy to eliminate those. And what we kept hearing about was how mobile home parks and self-storage were still performing so well, during COVID. And so that's what kind of piqued our interest. And then we just kind of dove right in. Nick said, if we can find a deal, I can put together the money with friends and family. So I made a list, first just going off Google and then through the podcast, we learned about the Florida Health Department list that has all the parks listed. So I would, write them kind of down in markets that we liked. I just started calling them. And I had never made, I had my sales experience from the hot tubs, but I, knew nothing about real estate, nothing about a business transaction. But I think that really helped me out when I was cold calling, because we were mostly cold calling mom and pops. Because, I was very casual and like I asked them a lot of questions. Like they could tell I was like excited and wanted to get started and really wanted to learn. And so that really, helped me bond with mom and pops because, they could kind of, step into that teacher role,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure, because I started calling around the same time, and I had some experience cold calling insurance, but it was different. It was definitely different. I didn't know what the heck I was talking about. But so, did both of you start calling, or was it just you?
I think Nick was doing some calling at the time and he didn't really like it. And I was so determined, Derek, to find this mobile home park. And I was calling self-storage facilities at the time too, sending out some mailers. And before I found this first park, we did some on-site visits with sellers, I think more at storage facilities than parks. But one day, I had just database, it was an outdoor, boat and RV parking facility. in Hudson, Florida. And next to it was a mobile home park. That wasn't on my list, 24 units. I was just like, what the heck? I'll call the owner. There's this really nice old lady, she's owned this park for, close to 20 years with her husband. And it was time to sell. And she wanted to sell or finance it. And that was good for us because, I was 21 at the time. I don't have a balance sheet that I can take to a lender. So that was my first park in Hudson, Florida. It was 24 units, all tenant-owned homes. It was city water and septic. And yeah, like I said, we were able to negotiate, some great seller financing terms. I think the down payment ended up being close. It was between 10 and 15%. So it's a pretty low cash requirement. And with the money I'd saved up from my hot tubs, I felt comfortable putting in about 15% of the cash that was needed. And then I negotiated, with our friends and family, a 5% fee, as my finder's fee / management fee to manage the park.
Nice. And so you got your first park there. And then what did you like? Was there anything you learned from that first park where you're like, whoa, this is a little bit different than I thought. This is more difficult than I thought. Or how was that?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that park has actually been the easiest park we've ever had to manage. The previous owner, she had actually done a really good job screening the tenants. It was a really great group of tenants. And again, all tenant-owned homes, so we weren't dealing with the headache of, any park-owned homes. But that was a good learning lesson from that park. Was, she was collecting, cash and checks, and we wanted to do all online payments. And so I went door to door to each tenant, had them, fill out this little form and kind of showed them how to do that. So that was my first experience converting a park to online payments. And then a couple months into managing the park, I went back to Massachusetts. I had to go back. I think it was just my senior year of college that I had to finish. So I was managing this park in Florida from Massachusetts. And so that's kind of how I learned how to be, more hands-off and kind of delegate tasks.
Yeah, and that's look, that's something, especially for someone like me, like when I built my other business, like delegating tasks, I was just never good at because we can always do it better, right? But
Yeah.
like it's good to be forced to put in that situation where you have to do that because most of the stuff at these parks, like you don't really add any value by being there and doing it as the owner of the park. Am I wrong about that? Like
No.
you don't. And you can get stuck. I talk to people all the time, but they're still stuck doing some of these little tasks that they're scared to outsource. But sounds like you did that quickly out of necessity, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So after that, so you guys just started acquiring more deals after that?
Yeah, so we had this park and we felt pretty comfortable with the management, and we were really excited, about the asset class, and we just kept cold calling, kept sending out mailers, and it's kind of like a snowball effect. Once you got one, it's a lot easier to start buying more parks. And our second park was actually an RV park, but it was run pretty similar to a mobile home park. The tenants owned their RVs and just paid lot rent, and they lived there, year round. And so that's kind of what introduced us to RV parks. And yeah, we really just took it from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what is your acquisition strategy when you're setting out to you've done it successfully 14 times. So you're doing something right. So what does that strategy look like?
Yeah, so we do really a majority is just direct to owner marketing. Like I said, cold calls and mailers. And we're pretty geographically focused. We really like Florida. It's a pretty hot market.
Yep.
And we think, Florida's going to see a lot of growth. And, it's pretty competitive now. There's a lot of people cold calling, these mom and pops in Florida. especially, in metro areas and primary markets. So we kind of strategically decided to focus more on secondary, even tertiary markets. We're not really scared of that. And, we look for smaller mid-sized parks. Kind of our sweet spot is between 40 and 80 sites. Some of those parks are, overlooked by the bigger players. So there's still, good opportunity there to find good deals. And we like, both mobile home parks and RV parks. They both have their pros and cons. And then storage as well. And in terms of like a price per pad, we really try to find deals between 25,000 and 35,000. For mobile home parks, we can usually get a little bit more aggressive, but that's kind of our sweet spot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and look, there are a lot of people calling Florida too, but with that being said, like when I get on if my team finds a relatively, someone waving their hand saying, "Hey, we want to sell," then I may call them. And I like going to see them. And it sounds like that you do some of that as well. And I think that's important because a lot of the brokers calling, they're not going out to see them. They're not, unless they're local. They're not going out there to see them. Some of the people have foreign people calling, which is fine, but we can differentiate ourselves just by being that, down to earth person, the actual owner or the person that's going to purchase it calls. And so that's how I differentiate myself. What do you do to do that, considering all the people are calling?
Yeah. I mean, Derek, how many calls have you gotten from a 23-year-old girl trying to buy your mobile home park?
Not many.
Not many,
You've
right?
never called me. You've never called me.
So, I mean, that's kind of the obvious one. Being a girl, you do stand out. Owning these properties, we get a lot of cold calls as well. And, usually it's guys or, VAs. And so I think that kind of gives me, competitive edge. And then, like you said, just seeing them in person, that's like the first thing I try and do, maybe even stopping by, having never even met them before, just going in the office, if there's a park office, saying hello, I own the park, down the street or, a few miles down, and, just wanted to say hi. And if you're ever interested in selling, give me a call. And I think a lot of people, when they first start cold calling and maybe they don't own any properties, you kind of like instinctually, you want to make yourself seem bigger than you are, kind of more important than you are. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. With mom and pops, they really, they want someone to carry on their legacy. They want someone they like and that maybe they can see themselves in, when they bought their park 20 years ago. And, I kind of always want them to do most of the talking. I try to talk as little as possible, and just because I'm here to learn about them, and their property. I'm not here to brag about, anything that I've done.
Yeah. And sometimes letting them talk, sometimes you got to stop them because they'll,
Yeah.
they'll go forever.
Yeah, but you also get a lot of good information that way. Once someone starts talking, they start to divulge all the secrets they may be
They do.
away.
They do. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, it's so and so in lot 14. They're whatever. This person is this. And I'm sure after they get off the call with you, they're like, damn, why did I don't even know why I said all that.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. So what is it like building a business with your significant other? I got to know this.
Yeah. It's funny because we had only been dating maybe a year and a half, before we started actually working together. And I think it definitely helped strengthen our relationship because right away, we're faced with, big financial decisions, right? Big, problem solving, kind of high stress situations. And so I think that, really brought us closer together. There definitely was a learning curve at first, we were always stepping on each other's toes, trying, especially when we were both cold calling, deciding who's going to call who. And so we quickly realized, we kind of have to delegate, our tasks. And what's really great is that Nick and I have very different skill sets. Nick is kind of, a math numbers person. He has more of a background in, finance and business, and I'm kind of the opposite of that. So we really complement each other on that aspect. He kind of deals with the capital side of things, talking to, lenders, investors, et cetera. And, kind of the personable one, talking to the sellers. And so it's worked out well. And I mean, overall, it's just been such a great experience. A lot of couples, when you work 9 to 5, you don't really see your partner that often. You come home, you have a couple hours, and then you go to bed. So it's really a blessing that, each day we get to spend most of the day together. So that's been really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that makes a lot of sense that, because I know some of the things that you deal with can be stressful in these deals, like with the banks and blah blah, all the stuff, right? That I think that can kind of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem like, as a couple, that would divert your focus off of getting mad if over little things, which,
Yeah,
I maybe happens from time to time, but it helps
yeah,
you focus on a bigger picture.
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still little.
Well, of course. Of course.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not an expert at doing the dishes, and my wife is like, I need to have her on here one day and like, what's it like living with a mobile home park investor / operator?
Yeah. And we travel a lot, driving around, seeing these different parks, and it's much better than just going alone, on an 8-hour drive. You have your partner with you, and you're talking business, and then you kind of go off. But the one con is, of course, it never stops,
Yeah.
right? It's 24/7. And so I'm kind of the one that at a certain point, it's 10 p.m. and I'm like, okay, no more mobile home parks.
I'm done with trailer parks today. I'm
Yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah.
So what's the I mean, what's the end goal for you guys? Where are you looking to get to?
I don't know. I don't know what the ceiling is. We just want to keep pushing and, growing our portfolio. Um, these past few months, I've really started to focus on our management, because we do self-manage all of our properties. And, the first couple years, we were just so focused on acquisitions. We had some small things like start to slip through the cracks because we didn't spend that much time really focusing on our management procedures. So, that's kind of a more short-term goal is, really locking in our management, but long-term, it's just growing our portfolio.
Yeah, for sure. And I think everybody goes through that. You're in acquisition mode, you're buying these properties, you're buying them, especially if you're buying value add stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, you'll have some things slip through the cracks, but then like one bigger thing will slip through and you're like, oh, okay, we need to start like getting our stuff together here. I mean, the same thing happened to us. And I've talked to countless other groups that the same thing happened to them. And actually, last year was a good time for us to focus on that because, I mean, you couldn't hardly buy anything
Mm-hmm.
last year. I mean, it was rough.
Yeah.
Last year was not fun at all. So, that happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to someone starting in the business, and they're maybe a little apprehensive to start or do so, but like, what would you say to that person are the most important couple things to focus on, or what should they do to start moving their dreams forward now?
That's a good question. I mean, kind of feel like everyone gives this answer. You just got to dive in. A lot of people will spend so much time, doing research, but they're kind of too scared to pull the trigger, actually make the phone call. Because what if they make the phone call and they actually get a deal? Now what? How are they going to find the money? And so I think people kind of freeze up. And so I know it's just easy to say, but you just have to dive right in. And something that really helped me is, you know, when I was making cold calls and kind of made the decision, you know, this is what I want to do. I want to own parks. I made a, you know, to-do list and some short-term goals. You know, here's what I'm going to really focus on, you know, the next couple weeks, the next couple months, and the next year. And when you kind of break it down like that into more bite-sized chunks, kind of makes it easier to focus on what you need to do now, you know?
For sure. For sure. That's awesome. And then how many, like, and so I will ask you, do the calls get easier to make?
They do. They definitely get a lot easier. I mean, those first calls, I thought I was going to pass out, you know, when I got on the phone. And now it feels a lot more natural, you know, but there's always some anxiety still, you know, still, and you always kind of get this fear like, oh, maybe I don't want to bother this person. You know, I just called them 2 weeks ago. Maybe they don't want to hear from me yet. And you know what? You're wrong, because that is how you miss out on deals. It's happened to me so many times. I was scared to call someone, you know, they told me to screw off or hung up on me. And then a month later, they're under contract. What
Yep.
happened?
Mm.
So don't be scared to call people.
Yes. Don't be scared no matter how they treat you. I'll add to that on the phone the first time, because I could think of 5 deals right now that I didn't call back because the dude was a douche to me when I called. And then when I finally, you know, bring up the nerve to do it, oh yeah, we're under contract.
Yeah, exactly.
And it hurts.
Yep, it does. It really does. But overall, I mean, cold calling, it's really helped boost my confidence, you know, because like we just said, people are going to be a little bit mean to you. You know, you do have to expect that. You will get hung up on. I've had people curse at me, you know, and I mean, I'm still a pretty sensitive person, so I take things very personally. But cold calling has definitely kind of thickened my skin.
Yes. Yes, it definitely does. And how many calls would you suggest someone make a day?
When you're first starting out, when you're first building relationships, you need to make a lot of calls to get traction. I mean, I don't know if I can place a number on it. I don't like calling people in the morning. I don't like getting calls in the morning. I don't want a cold call at 9 a.m. That's when I first sat down, and you know, I have a lot of to-do, you know, things on my to-do list. So personally, I start cold calling, you know, around 12, and I would just sit down and I would call till about 5 or 6. Um, and now, I'll be honest, I mean, you know, I kind of go through phases. You know, one week I'll be really motivated and I'll sit down and make calls, you know, for 6 hours. But on average, right now, I only make about, you know, 5 follow-up calls a day. And to me, that's kind of my goal. If I can, you know, actually have 5 good conversations a day with sellers, I feel good and I notice the momentum going.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean in the beginning too, it's good. You're right, but you have to make more in the beginning because you've got to filter through that list too, because some of those numbers are going to be bad. But if you can get, like, if you had 5 good numbers, 10 good numbers that you could have you knew it was the owner's cell phone, that would be a good day, right?
Mhm.
Um, at least if you had a productive conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I would really recommend is have some sort of tool to help you follow up, to remember the follow-up dates, because consistency really is key. I mean, just last week, we got a call from someone and then met him in person. I had sent him the first mailer 3 years ago. And I
Wow.
followed up 3 years of consistent follow-up, and it's finally paying off. Looks like we're going to be going under contract. Um, and you know, we use Podio. I don't know if you've heard of it,
Hmm.
to track all of our leads. And so we set, you know, consistent follow-up dates. You know, kind of depends on my conversation with the person, but we, you know, try and touch base, you know, at least every 3 months. You know, and that really is key, is the consistent follow-up.
Yeah, yeah, you have to follow up because if you don't, the same thing is going to happen that I mentioned before. You're going to call the guy, and the guy's going to say, oh, I talked to, Simone called. Now we're under contract with them. And then you're going to be pissed off because you didn't follow up.
Yeah. And it
It's
could have
not,
just been a
sorry,
2-minute
go ahead.
phone call. Yeah. It could have just taken a 2-minute phone call.
Yeah.
Get a deal.
Because they forget about you. I couldn't even remember, like, there's this guy that I've been working on. He now remembers me. But there for a couple months that like my team had found him, and then so I've been following up with him since. It took me like 2 or 3 45-minute conversations for him to remember me on the next call.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I don't use the dialer or anything. I just use my iPhone, call from my cell phone number. But that's the one thing I would recommend. That one piece of tech is, something to help, give you that follow-up schedule.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because you don't want to miss deals because you're going to be pissed off if you do. Well, Simone, any last words of wisdom before we go?
I don't know. I feel like we've covered everything pretty well. Again, when you're on the phone with these mom and pops, don't talk about yourself. Don't brag about yourself. Try to learn about them as much as you can. Just, have a casual conversation. And don't be scared to get on the phone. Make those phone calls.
Yes, pick up the freaking phone. Now, I know you said you don't like to call in the morning. See, with me, I had to call in the morning because if I waited till 12, I wouldn't do it. The anxiety would build up throughout the day, right? And if I knew I had to do it, I was like, I got to get it done as fast as possible. I don't care. Otherwise, I'm going to be completely scared by 12 o'clock and I'm not going to make any calls.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. If you're working a 9 to 5, obviously you're kind of limited with what time you have, so it's fine to call on the weekends. And I know for cold calling, if you Google it, there's kind of like a golden hour that people recommend. And a lot of people recommend you make calls, specifically after 5, when people are off work. And I kind of thought about that a lot, but with the demographics we're targeting, mom and pops, in their 60s and 70s, they're retired, they're home, so they have a kind of a more open schedule for you to be able to reach them.
For sure. For sure. Well, hey, Simone, thank you for coming on the show. I know you dropped some great knowledge for our listeners, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you for coming on. And everyone, thank you all for watching the MHP Show or listening. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. We have other videos on YouTube, so please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And we will see you all next week. Peace.
Thank you, Derek.